Shalom and welcome to this week's Living Torah. Feeling a little bit more like myself this week. I have to admit last week was a little on the rough side, getting over the jet lag and all that stuff that we went through. But in the end, we had a meeting at Life Assembly this past weekend, this past Shabbat, of course. And we had about 5 or 6 of us together there. And the reports, there is a CD out of MP3. Of course, it's available on our website, Israel Good Reports or something like that. Go to donations, you'll find that. And also another one coming out next month, which is myself and my son Daniel sitting down and talking about that. Also last night, recorded with Jared and Alex for the first time in quite some time. Still got a little bit of a raspiness here, so please excuse me. But we were able to record Life on Purpose and talked a little bit about the trip and some aspects of standing with Israel. So speaking of standing with Israel, well, we got some guys that did, and that's in the Torah portion this week. It says here is the history of Yitzhak. The word history, Taldot, is I didn't do it this year, go into that word Taldot, but let me put it into simple terms here. It is history, it is the genealogy, it is the generations. So, we can study the generations that are here in the scripture. And those are people that lived thousands of years ago, thousands of miles away from us. Or we can, again, go back to those words in Corinthians. It was interesting when I was in Israel this time that I had a Jewish friend who I don't believe has ever read the book of Corinthians. And when I say Jewish friend, I know, it's like, okay, which one? No, I have many, so this is not one that you would probably guess. So if you're trying to, don't even be concerned about that. But they were talking about how the scripture is a prophecy, and the prophecy is scripture. History, the things that happened were things that will happen again, which is exactly what 2 Corinthians says. Exactly what Rav Shaul, the Apostle Paul, said would happen. That the things that happened to our forefathers would once again happen to us. And it will be that way until the kingdom comes. So I guess the more pertinent question for me here is, as I read the history, the generations, the story of Abraham, of Isaac and Jacob, it should make us ask ourselves a question. If our book, if our story today, our history, our generations, that which we are living out today, if our life is a book, and I kind of believe that it is, as I look through different parts of Scripture, I see that he has books, that he has written our names down. Well, maybe he's actually written a book about our life, and it's in the process of being written today. So ask a question. If your life is a book, which genre would it be in? If you were to be able to go onto Amazon and order the book, which is called Your Life, what genre would it have been put into? If you were to go to Barnes & Noble, what section of the store would you be going to? Would it be a horror in the horror section because of the bad decisions that have been made? Or would it be in the comedy section? Because I have to tell you, a lot of people that I know today, their life is really kind of a joke. In a way, it's a bad joke, really. So it would be in the bad joke section. Or would it be like the science fiction? How would that be? Well, someone that's devoted their whole life to this conspiracy and that conspiracy and another conspiracy. Now, there's nothing wrong with keeping up with what's going on in the world, and a lot of it, the difference between a conspiracy and truth used to be about 6 years. Now it's down to about 6 days, I think. I just made that up. But if that's all that we live our life for is dissecting conspiracies all the time, and would our life be over there in the science fiction area? Would it be in the self-improvement? Which section of the bookstore would our lives be in? I would like to believe that a story, a book written about my life would be in, I wouldn't say religion, but in a section about God's people, a section about faith, a section about how to walk out a life. Maybe you and I are going to have our own genre, our own section of the bookstore. That would be fine. Just go ahead and break all the molds there. Now, with this guy, Isaac, it says that Isaac was 40 years old, and he, in verse 21, he prayed to Adonai on behalf of his wife because she was childless. Once again, here's a thread through the scriptures. A people who are childless. How do we relate that to our lives today? Well, look at your life. Look at my life. We are to be fruitful and multiply. Okay, is that just in a natural sense though? Where are the children of faith that our lives have produced through the years? How many people? And I know as I say that Noah, it was said, was a preacher of righteousness, and he got himself and 7 people on the boat. But it wasn't for lack of trying. You and I we may go through our whole life and never really know someone that is following God because of our lives. But maybe in eternity, we're going to find out that, wow, we just didn't see the fruit of it because our life was one of planting the seeds. Our life was one of watering the seeds. The harvest is His. It's not about us, each one of us putting that, getting that, that spiritual notch in our spiritual holster of how many souls did you win? Really? That statement in itself, to me, the more I hear that statement, the more arrogant it seems. How many souls did I win? Really? Is our witnessing about ourselves? Or is our witnessing about Him? So it really doesn't matter. But the question is, are we doing our job of looking at our lives, asking ourselves, does it appear that my life is barren? I mean, if you never talk to anybody about your faith, well, guess what? You're going to be barren in the end. It takes opening your mouth. It takes living it out. I was I actually played a little bit of golf yesterday afternoon, and there was a conversation going on beside me that it wasn't in any way being directed at me, or I don't even know if the two guys that were talking were even aware that I was listening to it. But they were talking about what one of the guys said, well, wasn't this guy a preacher? He said, yeah, and mentioned somebody else. And eventually someone's name came up that I've actually played golf with in the past. I'm looking forward to doing it again now. And this guy that I was going to be teamed up with yesterday, he says, there's a guy that lives what he preaches. And I found it so interesting that he would say something like that. Because what was he saying? That it's the norm for preachers to not live what they preach. Well, let's take it a step further. Is it the norm that people who say that they're following God are actually living the life of following God? Is it just the total rarity that someone who is actually proclaiming a relationship with the Almighty would have the audacity to live that life? Is that such a rarity in our day? I think you know the answer to that as well as I do. So here's this man, Isaac, who is 40 years old. His wife is barren, as Sarah was, as Rachel was, as Rebecca was at the time, as Hannah was. This is a theme, that barrenness in those that follow the Almighty, barrenness is kind of one of the traits, but it's there for a reason. It's so that we can, what Isaac did, it says he prayed to Adonai on behalf of his wife, but the word is more like he dug through, which is something that we'll see again in this Torah portion in just a few moments. He dug through in prayer. I was talking with someone, again, in Israel the other day. We were talking about society in general. And I said that we were talking about, the study of Scripture, about seeking God, about the involvement, being involved in what is happening today, the prophecy that's unfolding before us. And I said, the truth is that we live in a lazy world. We do. How much has the cell phone affected us in that manner? That you can pick up a phone and you can call a restaurant a block down the street and I can't because of where I live, but if you're in a city, you can pick up the phone, call a restaurant a block down the street and have your tacos delivered to you, and then pay a delivery charge, give the person that delivers it to you a tip, and then wonder why you're broke. I see this. I know a guy that, drives by a restaurant on his way to work and will not stop, but will get to his place of business and then call whoever it is, DoorDash or whatever we have around this place. I don't even know how to use those. Don't want to, really. But we'll call then and have someone deliver the food that he could have gone through the drive-thru and gotten. And then give the person a tip, which is probably equal to about a half an hour of his wage. We live in a lazy world to where, I want the 10-minute or the 10-second version of something. I was going to say 10-minute, but Barry Phillips has 10-minute Torah, which is a very good program, by the way. But there are people that won't even spend 10 minutes in a day. Won't spend any time, won't spend any effort doing things. Living a life that is godly, living a life that is knowledgeable of the Almighty Himself, living a life that is knowledgeable about His Word. I back to this crazy thing that I did a number of years ago. I'm posting on Facebook a thought for the day. And I put on there, I think yesterday's was, one should not expect God to speak to them if they're not reading what He already said. And as I posted that, it reminded me why I don't do things like that. I quit doing that for a while, because it's just like stupid came out of the corners. People they're like trying to dissect just a very basic thing, a very basic statement, and they've got to make some crazy comment about it. But the truth is that people do want God to speak. However, they've never spent time reading this word. That's called laziness, folks. Now, moving on from that, finally, we go down to verse 22, and, Rivka does get pregnant, and she's got twins. Not a good thing, at least what she's saying, because she actually says, if it's going to be like this, I'd rather die. Now, I know you ladies have gone through, a lot of you have gone through some, maybe some difficult pregnancies. Maybe you had twins or something. And it's like, this is really rough. This is painful. But I'm thinking that Rivka kind of took it to another extreme here, of saying that the fight going on inside of her was of such nature that she literally did not want to go on living. Well, what was that fight? That fight was over the covenant. That is the fight that is from the beginning, the fight that is in the end. And I mean, have you ever looked at the world today and thought, have you looked at the news? Have you considered at some point in time, it's just not worth living through all this? And I think we all can relate to what Rivka was talking about here in these verses. Because the fight is still real. The fight today is just as real in our world, being lived out, as it was in the womb of Rebekah in that day. And just as the fight was going on, the choice was being made, we're still walking out that choice of which side are we going to, who are we going to stand with? Which side of this are we going to stand? You know, Josh Waller's song, there's a line in the sand. Yeah, it's more like a trench. Today it's when he wrote that song 15 years ago or something, or 10 years ago, it was kind of like a line. Yeah. But if Josh was to rewrite the song, it'd be like, there's a moat in the sand. Where are you going to stand? It's clear. There's no like, well, the wind blew over the sand a little bit, and it's hard to tell where we're at here. No, it's very, very simple to figure out where that line is today. The difficult thing for many people is trying to figure out which side they're going to be on. Hanok and I did a Israel update last week, and I thought he said something that was very, very prophetic. We talk about a sifting, and Hanok put forth the idea, the sifting's over. The sifting's done. What was happening in the last 2 years, the sifting has taken place. Now, he agreed because he had a grandmother the same as I, that, when I remember my grandmother with the sifter, with the flour sifter, and at the end, there would be some flour that would be stuck to the sides of the wall of that sifter. And what'd she do? She took it in her hand, she beat it with the other hand, and a little bit more flour would come down. So maybe the sifting is not totally over. But I think for the most part, there's very little flour that is still stuck to the sides of the wall. We've really figured out where people are going to stand, specifically with Israel, specifically with the covenant in our day. Now, from here, we see this scenario of these two boys. And in one chapter, in chapter 27, we see two lies that have been expounded for years. It is said, and this is truth, that a lie told often enough becomes truth. Well, that's not actually true. But a lie told often enough and long enough becomes truth in people's minds. Again, looking over the last 2 years of this war, the current war in Israel, and I say current because it's not over. There is I'm going to be talking to Hanok about this tomorrow. There is the Hamas is rearming. Hezbollah is rearming. Iran is back to their old stuff. This is far from over, folks. We may be at a just very brief moment between contractions. And I can go out on a limb here and say that the next contraction is going to be of greater magnitude than the last contraction. Now, two lies that have been told through the years. Number one is that Jacob was the supplanter. He was supplanting the authority over his brother Esau. Well, if a person would not be lazy and just buy into what they're told, but actually open the scripture and read it, what was happening? It says that Jacob was holding the heel of Esau, which means that Esau was trying to kill his brother. That heel on the soft spot of his head was there to try to kill him before he was even born. So Jacob was not supplanting the covenant. Jacob was actually protecting the covenant. Number two lie is that Jacob stole the birthright from his brother Esau. Again, just a basic reading would take us down to verse 31 that says, "First sell me your rights as the firstborn." He didn't say, "I'm stealing it from you." He said, "I will buy it from you." So two lies that have been told for decades in Christian churches, Messianic congregations. Both of those lies are absolutely false. Now let's move on down to chapter 26. And it says in verse 4, this is the blessing, "I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars on the sky. I will give all these lands to your descendants, and by your descendants all the nations of the earth." David Stern says, "will bless themselves." I can't find that in Hebrew. It says Baruch, which is will bow down. So all nations, excuse me, all nations of the earth will one day bow down to the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now, is this saying that they will literally bow to these men and to the descendants of them? Or is this saying that all nations will bow down to one who is coming from their descendants, through their descendants? I guess I could make some arguments for both, but the main prophecy here is this, that there is a descendant that's coming from the natural genealogy of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The physical genealogy that will be the one that the nations will bow down to. One more thing in this, in these verses, one more thing in these verses right here. All this is because Abraham heeded what I said and did what I told him to do. He followed my mitzvot, my regulations, and my teachings. But the word in Hebrew is he followed my regulations and my Torah. And my Torah. The first time the word Torah is used in Scripture is right here. It is not in Exodus chapter 20. It's right here. So Abraham was familiar with the Torah. Why? Because it had been passed down from Adam, been passed down through his sons, Noah, passed down all the way through, again, look at a genealogy chart and see how these men, their lives were meshing together. And so the Torah was not something that was foreign to Abraham. In fact, when we will look at it later in the book of Exodus, the Torah is not being given to Moshe on Mount Sinai. The Torah is being restored to them. Not that the Torah is being restored, but they are being restored to the Torah. Because why are they in Egypt? Why are they in bondage? Because they had forgotten about the Torah of Abraham, of Isaac, and Jacob. And now they were being restored to it. So this word is being used right there. Now, verse 15, it goes over to the first, one of the first ideas here of Jacob, or of Isaac, as he was digging through in prayer for his wife. Well, here it says, now the Philistines, and this is verse 15, the Philistines has stopped up. Interesting, the Philistines. Okay? Today we don't have Philistines. But is it just coincidence that the word Palestinian is similar to and is really derived from the Philistines? And the same thing that we see today happening with the so-called, wrongly called Palestinians. There is not a people upon the earth today. Again, if you propagate a lie, tell it over and over again long enough, it will become truth. This one goes back to the 1960s. This one goes back to Yasser Arafat and the PLO, what is now the PA, the Palestinian Authority. Well, the Palestinian Authority is not made up of Palestinians, and they really have no authority over anything. Because they're not a people, they're not a country, they're not anything, except a man-made group of people, but the spiritual dynamic of them goes back to the Philistines. Now, who were the Philistines? It was the people that the tribe of Dan could not overcome. They left the area of Gaza. Now, that relates. The Philistines were known for raiding the Hebrew camps and taking men, women, and children hostage. The same as is happening today. History is repeating itself over and over and over again. And here it says that the Philistines had filled with dirt all the wells his father's servants had dug during the lifetime of Abraham, his father. So what did he have to do? He knew where the wells were. The word there is Ber. We see that as Beersheba, the place of 7 wells. The word can be used for a well. It can be used for a spring. It can be used for a cistern. But no matter which word you use, it still relates to this, that Abraham, and he instructed his servants to dig out this area so that water could come forth, life-giving water. What did the Philistines do? Stop them up with dirt. Now, there is a level of stupidity that is happening right here. If you're in a desert environment, which they were, and you see a well or a cistern that's bringing forth or holding a large amount of water, it doesn't make much sense to me that you would stop it up, except for one thing. You're wanting to erase the history of Abraham in the land. Same thing happening over again right now in the land of Israel. The enemy, Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, the so-called Palestinians, those on the Temple Mount, the Islamic Waqf, what are they doing? They're trying to erase the evidence of Abraham being in the land of Israel. What does Isaac do? He digs through them. He dug out the wells. Now it says that the wells had been filled with dirt. That's the same word that's found in Genesis, that Adam was made of the dust or dirt of the earth. So man had filled those wells with his traditions, with his doctrines, with his teachings, with all of those things that would keep people from understanding Abraham as our father. I mean, go back again to Vacation Bible School. Abraham had many sons, and many sons had Father Abraham. Acknowledging Abraham and then teaching doctrines that were basically man's dirt, that had filled it all up. It doesn't change, guys. It's just not that difficult to figure out what's happening in our day, because it's the same exact thing that was happening then. Now, chapter 27 is called the deception of Jacob. He is deceiving his father Isaac. Is it possible that if the first two lies were actually lies, is it possible that this one is? Now, this one has some different nuances to it, in that his mother is in on it, but it comes down to this. Let's see, in verse 18, it is, my father, here I am. Who are you, my son? Yaakov said to his father, I am Esau, your firstborn. I've done what you asked me to do. Okay. Is that really a lie? Well, I mean, I think you could make a bit of an argument on both sides of this. But what if he would have said, I am your firstborn? What if he would have left out the word Esau and just said, I am your firstborn? Would that have been truth? Yes, it would. Because he had purchased the birthright, the blessing of the firstborn. He had purchased it. He was the one who was walking in covenant. Now, this opens up a lot of discussion. I'm not going to go into all of this, but it opens the discussion of, did Isaac know what had happened between his two sons? Did he understand what had happened at the birth? Did he understand what had happened with the selling of the birthright? Did Rebekah understand what had happened? I'm just going to float this one. Is it possible that Rebekah, because Jacob is a man of the tents, some have tried to say that he was, kind of a mama's boy and stuff. I don't see that as, others have said he was more interested in staying and studying and learning, maybe learning his mama's Torah and then his father's Torah, so he stayed closer to the tents as his brother was wandering out doing his own thing. These are all very plausible in my mind. So is it possible that one day that Jacob told his mother, about what had happened regarding the purchase, the selling and purchase of the firstborn, the birthright. I can see that. So was it really deceptive? Again, the whole thing lays out a little bit more on the edge to me. That Jacob, I'm going to give Jacob the benefit of the doubt here, in that he was doing what was needed in order to protect the covenant. Because the next words are very interesting here. In the next thing it lays out, I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done what you asked me to do. And the next words translated are, get up now. The word is the word cum. Q-U-M in English. Do you remember those words? Do you remember that word? It is the word arise. It is the word that was spoken to Noah by the Almighty. I will make this covenant arise in you. It's the word that was spoken to Abraham. I will make this covenant arise in you. Over and over again, the word cum is attached to the covenant. So at least in my mind, I'm going to give Jacob the benefit of the doubt here and say he was doing what it took, what was needed in that day for the covenant to remain intact. Now, going on down, it says in verse 40, actually let's start in 39. Esau said to his father, have you only one blessing, my father? Father, bless me too. Esau wept aloud, and Isaac, his father, answered him, here, your home will be of the richness of the earth, and of the dew of heaven from above. You will live by your sword, and you will serve your brother. But when you break loose, you will shake his yoke off your neck. There is a multitude of teachings on these verses. There is a translation that says it like this: your home will be away from the richness of the earth and away from the dew of the heaven. Okay? If we look at the countries, and I'm actually planning to do a Foundations for Life tomorrow with Barry Phillips on this. That he just called me, and I'm gonna float this one as an idea that we're going to trace the genealogy of Ishmael, and also trace the genealogy of Esau into what is modern today. What are those genealogies pointing to? And it's one thing to say our father Abraham, but Abraham had two sons. Which one of Father Abraham's sons are you standing with today? Okay. Let's say that our father Abraham, Isaac. Well, Isaac had two sons, Jacob and Esau. Which one are you standing with today? It is not enough to only go back to our father Abraham. We must identify today with our father Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, going into the 12 tribes. So the richness, away from the richness of the earth, my Hebrew is not good enough that I can come up with why this one was translated this way. Away from the dew of the heaven. Well, if we look at this as the Arab countries today, well, you look at a map, and everywhere that Islam has, and this can relate to not just the physical bloodline, but the spiritual bloodline. Everywhere that Islam goes in the land, in the earth, desert follows them. Desolation follows them. Except for oil, they can take a land that is abundant and turn it into barren. A land that has rain, dew, and turn it into absolute desert. Why? Because of the spiritual nature that is following them. But the verse I want to key on is this. You will live by your sword, okay, actually two parts, and you will serve your brother. There is no doubt, I think, in most anyone's mind, that the descendants of Esau are a violent people. If they're not fighting with the descendants of Isaac, the descendants of Jacob, they will be fighting against each other. Every time I'm in Israel, I find this just such a fascinating thing. It takes a while, actually, for me, not being real good in languages. Some would even say English, but I probably have to agree with them. But it takes a little while to actually hear the difference between Hebrew and Arabic. Now, anybody that speaks either one of those languages gets it right away. But here's the way that I can tell that Hebrew is it's a beautiful language. Not only in the pictograms and everything that comes out of that, but Hebrew is spoken, is a beautiful language to listen to. Arabic, on the other hand, is a language that it doesn't matter if a wife is talking to her husband or vice versa, it sounds like they're yelling at each other. It just has an anger about it because the whole genealogy is about hatred toward the covenant. See, our decision of where we stand regarding the covenant will affect even our physical and emotional being. Amazing thought. But when you break loose, you will shake his yoke off your neck. What is it? What is that yoke? It's hatred. It's hatred toward his brother. I remember years ago, a guy that I know that was talking to I'm not going to give all the details, but was talking to a guy that he had met that had been part of the Palestinian Authority for a while. A man filled with hatred toward the Jews. And this person this friend of mine who had met him said to him one day, "You will never have peace until you learn to love a Jew." Well, that sent the guy into space, into orbit, literally, with his hatred. But he kept on. He kept on. He kept on. It kept telling him when this man would come to him with his hatred, "You will never have peace until you learn to love a Jew." Well, of course, in the end, he was speaking about the Messiah. He was speaking about the person of Yeshua. And this Arab man one day received Yeshua as his Messiah. And I sat down Kathy and I were there at Colorado Springs, sitting down across the table from this guy. And the peace that he possessed in that day, I couldn't even imagine him with that much hatred. He was that far removed from it. So the yoke that is on the neck of Esau is this, a hatred toward his brother. And when Esau, if you look at what's happening in Gaza, in Lebanon, in Syria, in Egypt, Jordan, any of the Yemen, all these countries. How do you explain how do you explain a suicide bomber? How do you explain sending your children to terrorist camps to learn how to put on a suicide vest? What level of hatred do you have to walk in to have that? It's one I would rather not even know about. Finally, in chapter 28, verse 4, and may he give you the blessing which he gave to Abraham, you and your descendants with you, so that you will possess the land you will travel through, the land God gave to Abraham. I've said this so many times, but I'm going to say it again. A gospel that is removed, or a gospel that has the land of Israel removed from it, is not the gospel. I remember Tommy Waller many years ago saying to a group, if you looked at Abraham, at Isaac, and Jacob and said, well, the land of Israel doesn't mean anything, they would look at you like you're crazy. Because you really are. Or at least you're very naive. That the land of Israel, why do I have to continue to teach people why do we stand with Israel? Why do I have to continue to teach people about the relevance of Israel? Because all they've done is open the so-called New Testament, and well, it's only mentioned like a couple of times there. Why? Because people have never read the foundation. They've never read the words of the book of Psalms. It's hard to read Psalms and not have a love for the land. In fact, I want to close with this, some words I read to Life Assembly this past Shabbat. Psalm 102, starting in verse 12 or 13, depending on your translation. But you, Adonai, are enthroned forever. Your renown will endure through all generations. You will arise and take pity on Zion. For the time has come to have mercy on her. The time determined has come. For your servants love her very stones. They take pity even on her dust. The nations will fear the name of Adonai, and all the kings of the earth your glory, when Adonai has rebuilt Zion and shows himself in his glory. When he has heeded the plea of the poor and not despised their prayer. May he put on record for a future generation. May a people yet to be created praise Adonai. Who's he talking about? He's talking about us, a people that are written in his book. May we continue to write a book about our own lives that's in a genre that most people have never even seen, a genre called faith. Not religion, not science fiction, definitely not comedy, but let's develop a new genre in the bookstore, a genre of the books of faith and the faithful. Shabbat Shalom. Shavua Tov. Have a blessed, prosperous week. Bezrat Hashem, God willing. See you again next week. Until then, be strong.
Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmarecha. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichunecha. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom.